Hey Flashaholics, I have a new debut for you here today. WOWTAC reached out to me with regards to reviewing their light, and they pitched something along the lines of, "You never seen such a great quality light, it's extremely good quality, yada yada yada." And of course, color me skeptical, they're a brand new company, never heard anything about them. I didn't know what to expect. But when I found out who they were partnered up with, I could see the reason for their confidence. Now, this is a 18650 size light that utilizes an XP-G2 emitter. They do have a different light, an A1S. That's their current two offerings, including USB rechargeable batteries. Now, before we get into the designs and features, the A1 comes in this cardboard box. Within was ample foam cushioning to protect the contents, and the light itself comes in this plastic sleeve. Two spare O-rings and a USB cable are provided, as well as this protective cover over the battery so that the light won't accidentally activate during shipping. When I first got the light, I was like, hey, I've seen this design somewhere before. It looks very familiar. Dum dum dum! And as you can see, it bears a very uncanny resemblance to the ThruNite TN12. This is the 2014 side switch model. So I would say, if anything, this WOWTAC A1 is almost like a TN12/TC12 mix. It's just that it doesn't have the USB recharging port like the TC12. So diving into the features of this light right off the bat, you can see there's an AR coated lens there. As mentioned previously, as an XP-G2 emitter, there is a side switch here allowing you to control the modes, and there is actually a physical forward clicky on the back here that controls the master on-off for the light. The anti-roll ring here does a okay job, but I would say if anything, it's really the clip that would serve that function better. There is decent knurling over the body as well as the tail cap, which definitely helps aid with grip. On the tail cap side, there are two attachment points for, I suppose, a lanyard or a wrist strap, although none was included. These tail guards do flare out flat, so that way you could use it in tail standing mode. Now, the kit that they provided did include a rechargeable 18650 battery, but in this case, though, the recharge feature is actually built in directly into the battery. So thus, because of the extra component necessary, this is a bit longer than your standard 2600 milliamp battery. Both the head side and the tail cap feature these springs, so it allows for some variety in play with regards to the type of cell that you can use. And as mentioned, owing to the built-in circuitry, this one is fairly long. It's at 70.2 millimeters. But ultimately, though, because of the springs, it can accommodate a variety of cells. To charge the cell, simply take the included USB or any micro USB cable for that matter and connect it to the port at the top of the head here, in which case it does take some finesse to align correctly. During charging, there's a red LED at the top that will indicate the charge state. When it's fully charged, it'll flip over to green. And as mentioned, regardless that it has the built-in circuitry, if you have 18650 charger already, feel free to use that as well. The A1 can be disassembled as such, and there actually wasn't a lot of grease on either end of the light. However, I do know that they are square cut and operate very smoothly. Of note too is that you can actually flip this tube around, so in case one likes a bezel up carry, they could simply put the tail cap on the head side and then the head on the tail cap side, thus accommodating that bezel up carry. And as you can see, it works perfectly fine that way too. And that pretty much caps off the major designs and features of this light. Here's a comparison to other similar size style as well as size lights, with the exception of the VG10, which does not feature a side switch and also has a turbo head. But names are all there. Any questions? Dump in a comment. Handling wise, I gotta say I've never been a huge fan of these tailguard style lights, but I could see why it's implemented, because in the case of the MMT, which doesn't feature it, there is always that chance of potential accidental activation, maybe if you threw this in your bag or whatnot. And then plus to mention, you can't really use this in tail standing mode, thus therein lies the trade-off. Now the main reason why I dislike it is because it always forces your hand into a certain configuration, because obviously your thumb has to nestle between the points, thereby you can't really activate that side switch with your other digits in a overhand grip. But of course that's not a concern with the underhand grip, but then you can't shut off the light when you need to, thus forcing you back into that overhand grip again. But regardless, it's a standard 18650 size light without a turbo head, so it feels just fine in my medium-sized hands without any issues, like I said, in overhand or underhand grip. The side switch provides a pretty satisfying tactile feedback, so that's giving you assurance of activation in addition to the visual cues that you're receiving. But bottom line, other than this little personal pet peeve there, no issues with handling this light. To operate the light, as a reminder, the tail cap features a forward clicky that is simply a master on-off switch. It has absolutely no bearing or play with regards to the mode selection. The mode selection and output level selection is handled solely by the side switch. This has the added benefit of allowing the light to be used for signaling purposes without worries of invoking any blinkies or other undesirable modes in this state. There are 4 output levels as well as a SOS that one can cycle through sequentially. Starting with low, a quick click will go to medium, then high, then turbo, then SOS. As you likely saw there was only 2 blinks in that first sequence of the SOS, so that's a small bug there. But after this, the next click will cycle back down to low. However though, there is a feature whereby if you go to medium and you wait longer than 2 seconds for the next click, it'll actually cycle back down to low rather than cycling upwards. So that's a nice touch if you want immediate access back to low without having to cycle through everything, especially that SOS mode. Now the light does feature memory mode so that it'll memorize the last output. So let's just leave it on high, shut off the light, turn it back on. As you can see, it's high. However, if you were in SOS or strobe, so here I am in SOS, and you shut off the light, the next time you turn it back on, it'll actually go back into turbo mode. And likewise, if you were in the strobe mode, shut off the light, the next time you turn it back on, it'll default back to the turbo mode. Now there is a hidden strobe mode that one accesses regardless of which mode you're in by pressing and holding on to that side switch. It's a fixed rate strobe. To exit out of it, just quick click. And that's pretty much it in terms of the operation. First up we have WOWTAC's A1. Now we have ThruNight's TN12 2014 Neutral White. Last but not least, we have ThorFire's VG10 847 lumen version. So here's the throw summary. The reason why this particular one is highlighted in yellow is because manufacturer claimed 280 meter beam distance, but when in fact 11.2K CD translates down to only 212. But other than that, the other manufacturer calculations were correct. So taking from the top, ThorFire's VG10 claimed 11.2K CD, 212 meter beam distance. This time around, I measured only 557, and that translates to 8.91K CD and 189 beam distance. ThruNight's TN12 came in at about 9.5K CD, which translates to 195 meter beam distance. Last but not least, you have WOWTAC's A1. As with the lumens they specified, they were a bit conservative. They only claimed 10.52K CD, 205 meter beam distance. I measured 13.6K CD, which translates to a 233 meter beam distance. So this is a nice thing to see, a new manufacturer not overestimating their specs. However, the thing is that this one was measured at an ambient temp of around 70 degrees. I did previously measure these two a little bit higher than current values, but again, that was done at lower temperature. So again, keep in mind, the ambient temperature does affect the outcome of the measurements, which is why I always capture the ambient temperatures here. But bottom line, I measured a bit higher than what they had claimed. So very nice, WOWTAC. The central hotspot is just a bit shy under 20 degrees, and the overall spill is roughly 70 degrees. And this matches the TN12 2014 Neutral White pretty closely. Central hotspot here is probably just at 20 degrees, with the overall width roughly also 70 degrees. And in terms of the beam profile, given the XP-G2 and smoothie emitter, it is geared towards a thrower with a pretty intense central hotspot. And as you can see here, it's tighter than the TN12s, but still with a decent amount of spill in there. The tint here isn't fully accurate. I would say that the A1 is definitely not that cool. It's got a greenish tinge to the central hotspot with a purplish tint to the spill, and it's likely caused by some part to the anti-reflective coating. And here you can see them side by side. I would say the TN12 is overall just slightly wider, both in the hotspot as well as the overall spill versus the A1. So I'm going to start off in low, and I've already pre-calibrated this with a different light, but what I'm seeing here is very close to what I'm seeing in real life, both in terms of the tint as well as the brightness level. So this is on low. That tree out there, I would estimate it's about, or I should say telephone pole, is roughly, I don't know, about 25, 30 feet out. Likewise for this bush here. So hold on, let me bump that up. Okay, so this large bush here, again, about 25, 30 feet out roughly, as well as this telephone pole. That street out there, I should say the fence, I would say is approximately 50 to 60 feet away. So again, start off on low. It is geared towards throw, so thus the tight hotspot. Medium, high, and then turbo. So that tree out there, I would estimate roughly 70 feet away. This fence about 50 to 60. This telephone pole about 30. It's being recorded in 4K downscale to 1080p. So to give you guys the best night beam shots. Alright, so as mentioned, the tent is very close to what I'm seeing in real life. I have no idea what that plant is called, but the tent is pretty close. So there's this shed about 25 to 35 feet out. Currently I'm on low. It's almost like an alleyway simulation, if you will, but it's a side of a house. Currently on low. And as you can see here, again, geared towards throw, although there's decent amount of spill. I think I'm seeing a little bit more spill in real life versus what I'm seeing on the screen. This is on medium. You can see the grass, bushes. And again, tint and output level both pretty close to what I'm seeing in real life. I would say the shed is perhaps a teensy bit brighter versus what I'm seeing in real life. But again, very close. This is on high and this is on turbo. In which case right now you can see a good amount of both throw and spill. That tree in the background, I would say estimate roughly about 50 feet out. By comparison, here's Menker's U11, which is a floodier beam profile. Definitely a bit more in the output, but as you can see, it's more of a floody profile. So this is on medium. I'm going to show you, and then the tight hotspot of the XP-G2 emitter of the WOWTAC A1 versus the floodier orange peel reflector and larger head of the U11. WOWTAC A1 on turbo and U11 on turbo. And finally a street shot. So this is pretty close to what I'm seeing in real life. That lamp just went out, but the asphalt and pavement hopefully should be relatively similar to wherever you guys are. This is on low. Now because of that step down back to low, I'm gonna have to cycle through back up to turbo pretty quickly. So medium, high, and then turbo. So I'm just going to keep you here for a second. That telephone pole I would say now is roughly maybe about 100 feet out. This tree here, about 60, 70 roughly. So this is the tighter hotspot of the A1 versus a fatter profile in the U11 on the right there. Again, tint and output levels very close to what I'm seeing in real life. As you can see, there's a bit of atmospheric dust, all that pollen. You know, it's funny, as a joke, every time trees reproduce, people suffer, man. People suffer horribly because tree and flower reproduction, but what can you do? Alright, so hopefully that gives you guys a good idea of how this light performs outdoors. Definitely geared towards throw, but with a still decent amount of spill in there. As usual, in the interest of time, I only conducted the runtime on the turbo mode, so right off the bat you're going to see that it holds that for roughly about 4 minutes before it does a complete step down to roughly 400 lumens, and this starts a gradual decline until finally reaches the NCF01 time of lower than 10% as measured after 30 seconds. So in terms of the values captured, it was 225 minutes. It was 701 lumens at 30 seconds, but the overall average lumens for the entire runtime was around 263. Total runtime achieved was 3.8 hours. Again, that's per NCF01 standards. And the ending voltage was 3.12 volts. Now, the A1 does feature a low voltage warning in that you can see here, it'll do this flashing. I think it's a double quick flash. So that way, at least you'll know that, hey, it's time to swap out the battery to recharge it. Ambient temperature was about 74 degrees. The head was 77 at start, and then it reached max of 101 F, so not too hot overall. But of course, as seems to be the norm in the industry nowadays, there still is a practice of a step down in order to achieve a higher lumens before step down. Still though, it is good to see that they were conservative in their estimates. So eagle eye viewers would have probably likely noticed at the beginning that technical support by ThruNite. So no kidding, the similarities between the lights, because ThruNite is, and this is totally just my speculation, producing their lights for them. ThruNite is probably acting like the OEM, and they're the new startup kid on the block. So that's why I feel that they are justified in their confidence of the quality of their lights, because I've handled quite a few ThruNite lights throughout the years, and they've definitely proven that they've upped their game to a very high level of quality. Support and services, I've kept tabs every once in a while on the forums, and overall, generally, they're pretty responsive, although maybe sometimes I've seen a few complaints here or there, but then again, I think it's par for pretty much any company. So before I get into the summary, one thing I did want to highlight is the fact that even though initially they have the branding of A-Tactical, as you saw in the box as well, the company is known as WOWTAC. I believe they went through a rebranding, so again, ignore the fact that you see A-Tactical here. For all intents and purposes, they are WOWTAC. So in terms of the summary of the light, I have to agree. I got to give it to them. Their quality is definitely there. Although I would have to say that it's on par with definitely the upper echelons of quality light producers. Not necessarily the best, but again, they can certainly feel comfortable bragging that these are definitely high quality lights. It's very solidly put together. The perfectly square cut threads, like I said, even without much grease on there, it operates super smoothly. There's no problems with the knurling. Everything is fully deburred and machined out fine. The switch operates with a nice tactile feedback, and that goes for the mechanical forward clicky at the end there. So the mechanical aspects, boom, they've locked that down. In terms of the electronics, one thing I did note was that from time to time, when I turned on the light, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm not pressing it fast enough or whatever, there was almost like, say, a very brief pre-flash. So like, say, if I was low mode, every so often, and I can't produce this consistently, I would almost see a pre-flash. So I don't know, I'll count that as a one-off on my side, maybe operator error in terms of how I press that switch. But aside from that, the only thing I could really nitpick about is that UI. Now, I understand UI is a very subjective thing. My personal favorite right off the bat would be Manker's E14. I really love the fact that you can go both up and down. In terms of the A1 with that step down back to low, I do like it, but it's both a blessing and curse. Blessing if you had intended to go back down, but a curse if you had wanted to go back, cycle up to the next highest level. So it takes some getting used to, but it's there for what it's worth. It's definitely different, not your typical UI. So there I know I could just step back down to low. Whereas if I really want to go back out and output, I would kind of have to click through very fast. Now, the only other major quirk that I have with the UI is that the SOS, first, there's that bug with just the 2 flashes initially, but that's not even it. It's more to the fact that I kind of feel the SOS shouldn't even be part of the cycle through the output levels. It should have been hidden along with the strobe mode. So perhaps, I don't know, maybe like say if you press and you engage the strobe mode, one click here would cycle it to the SOS. So that way everything is hidden and you don't have to cycle through the blinkies at all. But aside from that, as you can see, these levels are pretty well spaced, not too bad. Maybe the high and the turbo is a little bit closer than I would have liked, but overall spaced out pretty well. The low is not a true moonlight mode, it is just a low mode, but in the thrower I typically find that that's fine. At the current asking price of $19.99 US, you are getting extremely competitive product that is definitely quality made, but at a very reasonable budget price. So they are definitely going to be very competitive in this market if they keep this trend up, especially with their other releases. Yes, in terms of output, there are probably brighter ones out there, but again, taking into consideration the whole package and especially the quality of the light, which, wow, they weren't kidding around. So in summary, I gotta say, this is a very outstanding first debut of a product. Now, I haven't tested their A1S. I believe there's a few reviews out there. That one features a XPL emitter, I think with nearly double or because I tested this at 700, that one's rated, I think, a little over 1,000 or close to 1,100. Now, of course, the question remains is, because they are a new company, how is their service going to be? And if it truly is going to be fielded by ThruNight, I think it should be fine. But of course, I'm happy to hear your guys' feedback. Dump it in the comment. But in summary, I gotta say, WOWTAC, excellent job on your first product. I wish you guys the best of luck. And hey, competition is always great. So I really look forward to your expansion of your product line as well. As part of FTC disclosure, the WOWTAC A1 was provided by WOWTAC for review. Thanks again for watching.